and welcome to Dialogue. Since it's on air from December 27th, 2023, Blossoms Shanghai, the maiden TV series by famous Hong Kong film director Wong Kar-wai, has become one of the most popular TV dramas in the country. The 30-episode drama, which was 6 years in the making, is adapted from a novel of the same title, which won a literature prize in 2015. What makes Blossoms a unique masterpiece in today's world of Chinese literature? How is the spirit of Shanghai and China demonstrated in the story? And what is the complicated relationship between Shanghai and modern China? Join us for our discussion today from Beijing. I'm Xu Qinduo.
Blossoms Shanghai depicts the historical changes in Shanghai on the brink of modernization. The show follows the rise of protagonist Ah Bao, who seizes upon the opportunities in Shanghai in the early 1990s during the opening up period to rewrite his destiny with courage. The drama's portrayal of the city's iconic streets, local food, and even the language bring to life this amazing city. The director's creative eye highlights the heartbeat of the city with an interplay of light and shadow, reflecting the human drama beneath. The show has sparked a social media frenzy among fans, fueling a renewed interest in Shanghai and a travel boom to the city.
Joining me today is Zhang Xudong, Professor of Comparative Literature and East Asian Studies at New York University. Welcome to Dialogue, Professor Zhang.
Glad to be back.
The TV drama is a big hit, but it comes from a book, the novel. Not everybody has read the novel, so tell us what's the basic storyline in the book.
The novel Fanhua, the blossoms, blooming, there are various translations, is a novel about Shanghai. That's the only thing we can, everybody agrees on. Because it's hard to describe the plot, believe it or not. There's no main plot line, no single, the most important characters. There's a cluster of characters, protagonists, male and female. It's in little vignettes, little scenes lumped together. But on the whole, I think it's fair to describe it as a collection of speeches generated by the city of Shanghai. It's the humming of all kinds of voices and rumors, gossips, and social rituals, memories, nostalgia, neuroses, anxieties, urban legends, all that. So Fanhua, the blooming, it might be literally translated into clusters of flower petals or something. So there's no structure. It's just it's a bush. It's a bunch of everything. But that gives rise to its popularity, I believe, because different people can pick and choose different things as they feel related to. In terms of mood, the mood is very important, both for the novel and for the TV drama. Wong Kar-wai is very famous for creating a certain kind of a mood. The mood in general, I would say, is still Shanghai nostalgia.
In 2015, the book, the novel, won the most prestigious literature prize in China, modern literature. So is that what makes this book stand out from other?
Not particularly. It's actually a strange decision, I would say, for modern literary award to go to Jin Yucheng, because Fanhua, when it came out, was perceived as a quite non-mainstream kind of writing. It's first generated on the internet.
Yes.
Yeah, it's just like chat rooms, kind of people piling on each other to share, to spread, to add on, to supplement each other. So in a way, it's almost collectively produced. Of course, Jin Yucheng was the single author, but he was almost like a regulator of all these urban gossips coming his way on the internet. So it's the literary production was also quite interesting. And the sentiments are not typically mainstream kind of a representation of a society, right? The epochal themes, none of that. It was the whole narrative line follows a bunch of small folks, small potatoes, as they dine and eat and drink and make love and all kinds of everyday quotidian trivia. That's the substance of
day-to-day life.
Day-to-day life, and the tone. If you really want to try to tease out the ideological, the moral, even the political nuances, then again, it's nostalgia. It's the sort of the remembrance of time lost, form of life buried under those tidal waves of history. There's a feel of almost like underground culture, subculture. Yeah. So this becoming official of Fanhua in terms of this recognition in the form of a modern literature, it came to me at least as a surprise. Of course, I'm glad to see it's being recognized, right, by the literary establishment of the country, but nonetheless, the popular reception, the popularity of this novel comes from elsewhere, for sure.
Okay, the panorama, some people would say, of Shanghai. I mean, this the setting where it happens, all the stories there. Some have dubbed the book, quote, an exhibition of Shanghai's modern history and cultural development. What do you make of this? The book's effectiveness in addressing, say, the complicated relationship between Shanghai and the country. What kind of relationship you would say?
I wouldn't call it a sort of a depiction of the development of country. I mean, its history. I mean, in those terms, but in terms of its Shanghai's relationship to the rest of the country, that's a central relationship, because Shanghai is an exception in many ways. Shanghai being Shanghai is by and large is defined by its uniqueness vis-a-vis the rest of the country. If we don't want to use the language uniqueness, at least it's very different. It's the biggest modern city. It's the most modern city of modern China. It's a former semi-colony, right? A lot of foreign concessions, but it's also a very Chinese city. A lot of Shanghai critics tend to overlook this fact that Shanghai was always a highly Chinese city, filled with internal immigrants, ethnic Chinese sort of settling in foreign concessions, dragging with them all these local cultures, from all over the country. It's highly diverse, highly mixed. So I think Eileen Chan's description of Shanghainese captures this mixture most efficiently. It says Shanghainese are traditional Chinese under the pressure of the modern world. That's Shanghainese. They're distorted. They're squeezed. They become a different political, social animal. But they are traditional Chinese made modern, not always willingly or happily, but they had to adapt. In the process of coping with the modern, the foreign, the traditional Chinese living in Shanghai became Shanghainese.
Yeah. To what extent do you think Shanghai represent the Chinese urban culture, urban life?
I think it's the epitome of Chinese urban modernity. There's no question about it. It's the most mature form of Chinese modernity in the sense that every class, every sector of society, every form of life, there are many forms of life coexisting in this place called Shanghai. each and every one of them ended more fully developed vis-a-vis other parts of the country. For instance, it had the most developed working class culture, right? Proletariat. If you want to say there's such thing called the Chinese proletariat, look Shanghai.
Shanghai, yeah.
If you want to look for Chinese bourgeoisie,
Shanghai
come
too.
to Shanghai. If you want to look for petty bourgeoisie, the 小市民, the petty urbanites, then the Shanghai culture is the most elaborate form of this petty bourgeois kind of self-contained world of fantasy, world of precariousness, world of resilience, right? The sort of the combination of everything. All that, all those things are somehow found their places in Fanhua. That's why it's it's a wild blossoming of all kinds of flowers, weeds, some good, some are not so good. But who is going to judge? Jin Yuchun does a great job, I think, by letting these wild plants grow wildly with seemingly minimal control. But that seemingly minimalist control turns out to be a great way of organizing all these materials.
Then, of course, the drama, as we said, has become since December 27th, when it was on TV, and it has become the most talked about TV show in China. How do you look at this commercial success of the novel, of the adaptation here?
Well, it's a surprise and it's not. It's a surprise in the sense that I would expect this phenomenon to be contained more or less within the world of a Shanghai nostalgia, Shanghainese loving Shanghai being represented in national or even international media, that sort of thing, precisely because of their sense of loss, sense of being marginalized in recent decades, no longer as the cultural center, the intellectual center of the nation. That's Beijing. I mean, no rival whatsoever. So Shanghai's relative marginalized position as a center of cultural productivity, its relatively marginalized political status, all these may sort of may drive a certain sense of search for recognition, right? Search for media exposure, looking for self-identity. That would be very understandable. But the popularity of this TV drama directed by Wong Kar-wai was way beyond that. It seems to be a national hit. That's a surprise. But it's not really a surprise either because of Wong Kar-wai's international reputation. He's generally regarded as one of the very best film directors of his generation, of the past at least a quarter century, or maybe ever since the early 90s. Not only one of the most prominent directors from Hong Kong or Greater China, but in the whole world. I mean, Wong Kar-wai's international claim is such that so whatever he makes instantaneously attracts at least critical attention. But Wong Kar-wai was never known for commercial success. Most of his films were highly respected, but more or less confined to the art film circles, to professional critics, But in China, I think it might be fair to say this is so far the biggest commercial hit by Wong Kar-wai ever. Yeah. That's also a surprise. But then it begs the question whether Wong Kar-wai's version of Fanhua does justice to Jin Yuchun's literary version.
This is what I'm going to ask. Basically, the TV drama tells a very different story from that one from the novel. It tells about, it focuses basically on this protagonist, Ah Bao, as the male character, and the story is more simpler, and I guess probably easier for audience to understand, to follow. What do you think of this adaptation? Very different from novel, but yet it's still a success.
Yeah. Well, first of all, I would say that Wong Kar-wai has the right to turn the novel into his own movie. That's his right. I mean, so I don't think readers or audience should be too critical or too picky in terms of sort of comparing notes. Oh, I mean, what happens to other characters? What happens to other details? Or so. No, that's unfair. I mean, Wong Kar-wai, of course, it's his work, and in general, great literature never leads to great film adaptation. There are simply not too many success stories. So the success of Wong Kar-wai's TV drama is Wong Kar-wai's success. To some extent, it's still based on a novel, to be sure, but there's a great degree of simplification. There might be some artistic justification, but as a literary critic, I approached the TV drama with much regret. Because, for instance, you mentioned Ah Bao, right? Mm-hmm. But there are at least three main male protagonists
in the book.
The other two are almost equally important. The TV drama focuses only on Ah Bao, only in the period of the 90s, whereas the novel keeps going back to the 60s, right? To the Cultural Revolutionary era. And by extension, the imagination, the emotional truth of the novel has to include the 30s, the imagination of the old Shanghai, right? The time lost, time regained. That's the whole atmosphere is built on this temporal structure, right? The 30s, the 60s, the 90s. So the TV drama sort of goes straight to the 90s. The stock market craziness.
Right.
Yeah. Ah Bao story. But Ah Bao is among the three male protagonists we just talked about, is the most ghostly, the hardest to catch, to pin down. Mm-hmm. He's like a ghost. He's like the narrative voice. Ah Bao is really, in a novel, a literary device. Not necessarily a character.
The main character.
Yeah, a protagonist. Yeah, because his only characteristics, if the impression left with the reader is 不想, right? Remain silent. Yeah, speechlessness. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that sort of. So how could you turn silence, a figure of silence, of hesitation, right, of pain, of uncertainty, into the central figure around which a TV drama unfolds? So in a way, it's a success that Wong Kar-wai made it work. Mm-hmm. But it's Wong Kar-wai's work. It's not Jin Yucheng's work.
But they did promote the book.
Of course. There's no such thing as bad press. I'm sure Jin Yucheng is very happy with Wong Kar-wai's adaptation.
It's usually the case, when people watch the movie, watch the TV, they will go back and find the book.
Yeah, which is a great thing about promoting this novel.
It's a great promotion.
Absolutely.
Speak of Ah Bao, of course, the protagonist in the TV drama. It describes his entrepreneurship. His entrepreneurial journey during the 1990s. When the country was at its height of reform and opening up. Of course, it also, people say, to reflect the spirit of Shanghai. It's focused on the city, the characters, people living in the city. What is the Shanghai spirit? Both in the book and in the drama.
I heard two parts of the question, of your question. One is this Ah Bao's sort of struggle, his effort as an embodiment of 90s Shanghai, joining this global sort of a trend of a capitalist world market, that's sort of privatization, capitalization. The other is the Shanghai spirit. I think these two are slightly should be maybe addressed slightly separately. Mm-hmm. First, I don't think Ah Bao sort of is a typical character in a typical environment. That's sort of the cliche of a realist drama. or representation of history. There were, during the same time, there were indeed a lot of early entrepreneurs, Shanghai natives or those who returned from abroad, sort of making money, opening a business. But Abao was significantly occupying a significantly lower level of entrepreneurship. He was not supported by international capital, right? He was not bankrolled by Wall Street.
No.
He was not supported by the state. He was not even supported by the Pudong district. So he was on his own. He was a small potato.
Right.
Again, what's important about Fanhua, the novel at least, is this a group of a small men trying to make it without success. If Abao was some kind of a hero of Chinese reform, that runs against the grain of the entire work, of Jin Yucheng. I think to push the argument, observation even further, I think one could say that it's precisely the success story of Shanghai today, or in the past 2 decades, 3 decades, ever since the opening of the Pudong, right, becoming sort of the second Shanghai. Abao's world is doomed. The countdown of Abao's world, the death of Abao's world, has already started. Finally, it's not buried by what's imagined as the political society, cultural revolution, right? Kind of a communist culture against the grain of locally homegrown, lower middle class, urbanites culture. No. Actually, in the 60s, in the early 90s, this is very distinct in Jin Yucheng's novel. What we see is the radical coexistence of all kinds of modes of production, forms of life, value systems, tastes, habits, right, and so on and so forth. It's a weird, subtle equilibrium. You could not possibly claim victory. Nobody could claim victory. This world was, I think, finally finished off by the new Shanghai. If you go to Pudong today, you realize there's no room for any of those characters in Fanhua. So that's one thing I wanted to say. The other about the Shanghai spirit. First of all, I don't think there's one single Shanghai spirit. If there's any, it's a highly mixed sort of a combination in terms of socio-historical geology. I think all these layers sitting on top of each other, forming a very complex, still unstable, interesting kind of a structure in terms of periods, different historical periods coexist in local Shanghainese mind as time lost, time regained as time lost, all of which gives rise to this particular Shanghai sentiments.
About the author, Mr. Jin Yucheng, of course, one thing that makes the novel stand out is Shanghai dialect, both in the novel and also in the drama. In the interview, he said, this choice makes the language more lively. From grammar, phrasing, and the rhythm of speech, is steeped with the flavors of the city in which the story is set. So, the Shanghai language added the flavor and the necessary flavor to the novel and also to the drama.
Yeah, but I think it's an understatement. It doesn't grasp the full importance of this matter of Shanghainese dialect. I should say that in Fanhua, Shanghainese is not a dialect, but a language. And in a language not in terms of vocabulary, but in terms of grammar. Right. Yeah. This is very important. Let me elaborate a little bit on this. To say, it's great, finally we have a novel using Shanghai dialect. I mean, that's decorative, that's secondary, that's superficial, right? You like add a little salt and pepper, some sauce to make it full of local flavor. No, that's not Fanhua's ambition or artistic achievement. It's highly accessible, the novel, to those who don't speak Shanghainese at all. You should have no difficulty reading the novel if you don't know a single word of Shanghai dialect. It's highly accessible. Rather, I think the ambition of the novel is not to teach literature to speak Shanghainese. That's not it. It sounds ambitious enough, not ambitious enough for Jin Yucheng. I think the true ambition and accomplishment of Fanhua it is to let Shanghai speak for itself. So Shanghai becomes its own language. This language must be understood historically, sociologically, economically, culturally, psychologically. Before, Shanghai, in figurative speaking, remained silent, was rendered dumb because it was silenced. Yeah. Silenced because of the social transformation after 49, because of the cultural conflict between the city, this urban culture vis-a-vis the rest of the country, because of its relatively more developed, advanced status, and because of its unique middle-class culture. It's quite singular. In other great cities like Guangzhou, you could see this everyday life, this distinct local form of life for sure. But Shanghai's local form of life was tinged with westernization, the foreign influence, all the class implications. So it becomes quite convoluted. How to make this whole thing, this authentic historical experience and memories speak for themselves. It requires a highly innovative narrative structure, including the design of literary characters, protagonists, the way they interact. We touched on that, right? There's no unitary plot line. It's a bunch of gossips. If you read
monologues there.
Exactly. Yeah. And if you read those whole bunch of things, before you could even try to decide what this whole thing means, you're already in touch with Shanghai almost talking in its own dreams. Like a 说梦话, right? It's like this unconscious, it's a gigantic collection of the slips of tongue of Shanghai itself. So that what struck me as interesting of this literary work. But of course, that's probably, it's fair to say, it's beyond, film adaptation. Film or TV, television as a visual form of art must take a different approach.
Thank you, Professor Zhang. Thank you.
It's a pleasure.
Thank you for speaking with us. With that, we come to the end of today's discussion. Many thanks to Professor Zhang. You can also find us on the CGTN app on YouTube. I'm Xu Qinduo. Thanks for being with us. See you next time.